Hey everybody, this is Silver Spook, and this is the video on Imperial Implosion and the political, technological, financial dimensions of Death Star destruction. So, you know, that's Mark Hamill, famous actor who portrayed Empire fighter Lucas Skywalker, Luke Skywalker in the Star Wars movies, the beloved original trilogy, Episode 1, A New Hope. The Empire Strikes Back. Luke goes down for the count for a bit, and then the Return of the Jedi. And I won't spoiler that for you if you haven't seen those movies, but but in case you don't know who that is, for some, if there is any younger audience members that don't recognize those people, that is on the left side of center stage is, of course, Joe Biden. You may know him. Hugging Mark Hamill. And this picture is from today. It is sadly from today. And oh my gosh. Yeah. So this is gonna be like I know. I kind of wanted to do like an Imperial, an update of what is happening. Generally, there's just like so much happening. Some of our a black activist and also YouTuber, Black Red Guard, recently said that it's one of those weeks where decades happen, and it's definitely one of those weeks. It feels like. I mean, it just feels like every year more things are happening in the last several years. It's difficult to even contextualize how big these changes are, but they are very. These are very, very large changes that are happening in the world, and it's hard to. I don't think we're gonna really understand the magnitude of what is transpiring right now for some time. It's gonna take a while. Historians will write about it, I'm sure, if there are any to write about it. Hopefully, there will be. Probably there will be. But the it's like I don't even know where to start with this, but I just Mark Hamill got up on the stage, and I'm like 41, so I mean I was 3, I remember my dad, like I told this story recently, I think, but I told it again. My dad took me to see my dad and my mom we all went to see Star Wars Return of the Jedi when I was 3 in 1986 in the theater. And I remember watching that and being like, "Oh my gosh, I would love to be a Jedi. That guy is so cool. That guy has a laser sword. He's got starfighters. He's like fighting these horrible, really nasty military stormtrooper guys. They've got guns and they're really nasty. They're beating up on the poor Ewoks. They're beating up on the people across the galaxy, and all of these people, these rebels, are coming together to rise up with guerrilla warfare. Collectively, doing armed struggle against this oppressive, galaxy spanning empire that's pulling troops and the resources, and it's hoarding all the resources in its to make this Death Star in the center of the galaxy. And it's got these super rich, nasty, really pasty white dude with red, very baggy eyelids, and he's got this cloak over him, and he's pulling the strings in the background, making things happen across this galaxy for his own personal self-interests. he's making military go around and making their TIE fighters go and shoot at you know the nice tauntauns on the ice planet. He's got his legions just like marching through areas of Tatooine where those moisture farmers are just trying to harvest hydrogen and oxygen from the atmosphere. They're just trying to farm water, whatever that means. And then these stormtroopers come through. They just kill everybody. They kill these funny little 3 foot tall, glowing yellow eye dudes, Jawas. These empires are so nasty. And then what do? They kill lots of people. They terrorize with their armored jackbooted white plastic chest-plated stormtrooper thugs. They come in and they beat everyone. They kill lots of people until the people agree to do whatever this empire says, ordered by Emperor Palpatine and Darth Vader, and then they take all their people. They make the people of those planets, they take their sons and make them into stormtroopers like Finn, and that's just horrible. That's this horrible thing that this empire does. It's a good thing that it's a good thing that these I think they're called colonies. It's a good thing that the empire's colonies, peoples, have risen up in protest and then in armed resistance through this group called the Rebellion, against that empire. And it's kind of like, I mean, obviously, that's not, I didn't think all those things at the time, but it's kind of like, Mark, what are you doing? Oh, sorry, I'm just monitoring my chat, but my chat is having a slight freak out. It's kind of like, what are you doing, Mark? Why are you taking pictures with this man? I mean, obviously I'm talking about a lot of things at once, but I mean, I think, I've made at least 10 separate YouTube videos that spiral outwards, kind of, I discuss a variety of topics originating from a focal point of Star Wars. I take the Force, and then I bind the galaxy together, with it, so, on several different streams, and I don't know, I don't want to rehash all of that, but and obviously there's the problem with I've talked about historically over the course of this channel's existence that entertainment and pop culture, for about a year and a half, I mostly was just like taking pop culture phenomenon, movies and TV shows, and just like discussing them and kind of dovetailing out into these other topics. And then there's a problem, of course, which is that, I mean, and as somebody who makes, obviously, entertainment media myself, like Neofeud, obviously Neofeud 2 that I'm still working on. I make video games, but they're all part of entertainment, culture, art, the dimensions of reality. And I've discussed, like, the difficulty of, like, how do you convey actually beneficial messages, and how do you move people through art in a positive way, especially through like film, TV, games, and things that are mass consumed by a lot of people. How do you make art that is, number one, consumed, but then also like people consume that media and then like actually are changed in a positive way, right? And it's difficult because obviously Star Wars, Star Wars, George Lucas didn't say it at the time, but like which is a George Lucas problem. But he recently said in the last 2 decades, and then he said it again more recently talking to James Cameron, that Star Wars was a metaphor. The rebellion was Viet Cong. It was the Vietnamese resistance against the U.S. empire, right? And like, I mean, if you look at it closely, I mean, it's a guerrilla army fighting against an imperial invasion, which is what the Vietnam War was, right? And obviously, George Lucas is a boomer. He would have been, you know, in his college age years. He like the current actions happening, right? For Palestine today, right? That's what we're showing in the upper left of this image here. Um, George Lucas would have been, you know, of an age where he would have been at the actions. Like obviously this is a little bit blurry, but you know, this just happened this week where you have the young people, right? Young people showing up to college campuses in mass numbers and protesting and disrupting business as usual in order to try to stop in the 1970s what was then a U.S. Imperial invasion of another country. In that case, it was Vietnam that resulted in genocide, and it was a massacre of hundreds of thousands, and then in total millions of Vietnamese people over the course of after the shooting stopped. If you add up all the deaths and resulting deaths from Agent Orange, etc., it was a horrible genocide, very much like what's happening in Palestine. And so George Lucas, you know, and that was an experience that, and there have been many comparisons made, right? Between Palestine today and Vietnam 50 years ago that are accurate. There are even images that you put them side by side, and you it's hard to tell, is this, if you took off the black and white filter, or you put the image, you know, if you took out the 2024 I'm probably gonna find something if I just search this up. You know, yeah. I mean, like, this is the black and white 1970s, right? Protesting Vietnam, LBJ against the U.S. president, committing genocide there, and then you have, college students today protesting the genocide and killing of innocent people in Gaza, and calling for the bringing to justice of Joe Biden. I mean, it's very clear the parallels are unmistakable, unless you intentionally feign ignorance, act oblivious, etc., which many liberals are doing. And there's so many parallels. Let's see. Oh, sorry, it's getting windy. New York Times. Don't want to listen to the New York Times. American college students have been on the cutting edge of social justice. Another point is that, you know, if you are against mass student protests, you are probably almost guaranteed to be on the wrong side of history. Or there's the Vietnam War, the stopping the genocide in Gaza, Occupy Wall Street. I was a part of that one. I remember that. Trying to bring, giant mega banks that had rigged the entire economy, stolen entire trillions of dollars from humanity, really collectively, certainly the United States citizens, and got more money awarded to them for that crime, while students were forced to pay back, hundreds of thousands of debt, and infrastructure was falling apart, right? So that was a more like finance and economics focused Occupy Wall Street collective action led by college students, right? I had just got out of college at the time. I was like, Holly and I were at De-Occupy Honolulu. But, you were on the wrong side of history if you were against that. Protesting the Iraq War. That was another one that was led by a lot of college students. So historically, if you're on the other side of that, you're on the wrong side of history. And then there was Vietnam. Today it's Palestine. 1968 Columbia University, 2024 Columbia University. Somebody brought up that solidarity student protesters at Pomona College, Vanderbilt, elsewhere, anti-Vietnam War protests of the 1960s and student activism for Palestine today have very clear visual comparisons. Not just visual, and everything is visually they're similar in terms of their content and activity, they're similar. Everything is nearly identical, actually. Um, and the funny thing is, Columbia University, which is where the student-led Stop Genocide protest initiated, they actually use as a marketing tool on their websites and in their pamphlets. Columbia University administrators, they use the prestige of being the place where these actions took place. So like Columbia University, where we fought for freedom and liberation and political justice and social justice. For example, during the Vietnam War era, look at this. But the thing is, it was the university that was itself part of suppressing the students, right? It's and they and today again, the university as an institution continues to suppress its students, right? And famously, like that recent, like I mean, just since we're on the current events, let's jump over to I'm not gonna find it if I type this in. This professor, Columbia, there is a campus psyop from a tri-role Columbia professor, civilian NYPD counterintelligence chief, and also she has a she has an office. This person, she is the professor, right, who is simultaneously working at Columbia, works for NYPD, right, the fascist thugs, and also has a office in Tel Aviv. So literally, she works directly with Israel. All three. It's kind of I mean, it actually makes perfect sense though if you know history, economics, and politics, and very important truths about reality and how those all play together. There's probably many of these actually. I mean, there's not probably. There definitely are many of situations like this that we don't know about yet, because empires function with lies, right? Imperial, and that's another important part. So like I talked about in recent videos, constantly feeling cognitive dissonance and confused and gaslit is the perpetual, eternal, resting baseline. It's like it's the resting Keanu face, right? It's the resting bewildered face of the Western person, the American and the European and the Roman and the Greek person is constantly being befuddled by what is happening, because things happen and you're being told the opposite, right? That's not normal, right? You should live in a society, and there are societies, there are countries, there are civilizations, present and historical and future, that the government says one thing, right? Leadership says one thing, media says one thing, and that thing is happening in the real world, right? There are societies like that where you don't have places of learning and police officers being shown, colleges and the police being shown, right, to be great, like Brooklyn Nine-Nine, really funny, cool, relatable comedian police officers. You got LAPD, NYPD Blue. You got really great police officers just doing their job, solving crimes, stopping bad people, stopping burglaries and preventing murder and stuff. And that's what most shows are about, right? The shows are run by the empire, all TV and movies, right? It's like, and so and they're showing you, and the news is saying the cops got the bad guy, this cops got this, there's this crime that was solved by the police. The police stopped this crime. Police are stopping the Hamas terrorists. Police are stopping those violent radicals on campuses, right? You're being told that, but then when you go and you show up to a protest, if you watch what the NYPD is actually doing, or Western U.S. police are doing generally, they're doing the opposite. They're beating up people, innocent, nonviolent people, and then the media says they're violent. Joe Biden just came out and says, right? Joe Biden came out yesterday and said, oh, all those protesters, they're violent. Peaceful protest is protected in the United States of America, and free speech is protected. Violence and hate speech, like, right? Hate speech, stopping genocide is hate speech, and violent action is not protected, and you're like, well, these students are being peaceful, and then the police show up and they're doing violence, right? So that is not normal. That is not normal, right? To be told by your leadership that the sky is red or the sky is green when it's blue. To be told that to be told that the students that are being completely peaceful are violent, and the police are stopping the violence when they're the ones that are doing it, like literally shooting rubber bullets at people that are just standing there. They're just people are just exercising their right to freedom of assembly, and they come in with unprovoked, come in with tear gas, batons, beating people up, just random people walking by, right? And that's and then you're being told on the media, in the empire controlled media, corporate media, that the opposite is happening, right? That is a symptom of the sickness of your civilization. I mean, I say that as collectively all capitalist, colonialist, imperial, going all the way back to 2,000 years ago, in Greece and Rome, which operated the same way, which were empires as well. And I mean, so but anyways, so the similarities between the Vietnam War era and this era are very much well, we've established that is the case. One other thing I want to bring up, speaking of Vietnam, I'm going to see if I can talk to our friend Luna. Speaking of the Vietnam War era and Vietnam and Star Wars, don't forget to follow Luna if you want to learn about actual history from the actual real world rebellion perspective. You have to listen to your actual rebellion, which is it's the global South, it's colonized people, it's the Black indigenous people of color around the world that are the actual resistance to empire, which which comes from the Euroid portions of the planet, and is works in white supremacy, obviously capitalism, and the military industrial complex, and that was part of attacking Vietnam. Right today, they were killing and genociding Palestinians. The United States, the empire, was killing and genociding Palestinians during the time of Vietnam. Right. That's another layer of analysis that many people have to come to over time, and in their journey of trying to decolonize and deworm their brains, not just of COVID-19, but all of the imperial lies that are near infinite, and extend across space and time, even into fictional universes like Star Wars, right? Which, like, again, if people were getting the message, even the guy who played Luke Skywalker, Mark Hamill, he had to memorize the scripts back to back. He had to memorize the scripts. He was on the sets, right? He was directed by George Lucas, right? George Lucas, did you ever bring up who the Empire was to Mark? I mean, I really question that. Mark has voice acted in later Star Wars over the last 40 years. He's been in so many Star Wars, right? He was the original Imperial fighter. I mean, the anti-Imperial fighter in the science fictional, the most beloved, if not one of the most beloved, if not the most beloved American movie franchises of all time. And he didn't even get the message. He probably had to read through A New Hope and Empire, I'm sure, like at least 10, 20, 30 times. He rehearsed those day after day after day. So, it's kind of like so the lies even extend into the Star Wars. But part of what made it not hit, part of what makes it is that the Empire's lies are so pervasive and so strong that even if a piece of art or media is trying to tell you something, the Western mind will take what is being said and what is being expressed or what is being implied, right, in that piece of media, and it'll warp it into the the matrix of disinformation and the false narrative constructed by the U.S. media, your school, your K to 12, and your college. I made a thread recently about the problems with Western education collectively, universities specifically, and I talked a lot about in the last week what we need to look at going forward. And so that's part of where, like, even if you make media that is trying to say something, Starship Troopers is another one of these. The person who made Starship Troopers is, well, that was about it was against the U.S. empire, but then it was a criticism of empire and U.S. empire in particular. But people will look at that and go, Americans will look at that movie made by a European or is directed by one, and American Imperial troops put that on their walls in their Afghanistan and Iraq military bases. They're like, I signed up for the military because of Starship Troopers. Like, that's a common refrain. Like, I remember I was reading, like, there's countless Reddit posts of, like, guys who are like, oh yeah, when I watched Starship Troopers, all I wanted to do was sign up for the military, right? And so now, whose fault is that? Is that the fault of the art creator? Is it George Lucas's fault that Mark Hamill is covering his hands in the blood-soaked coat of Joe Biden in the Palestinian, Iraqi, Afghanistan, and Vietnam blood that Joe Biden has bathed his hands in because he's been complicit in all those genocides and war crimes? Is it George Lucas's fault that Mark Hamill, or is it I mean, that's not a question that we can directly answer at this moment, but it is a problem, and I say that as somebody who makes this media. I'm like, I would like to know the answer to that. I don't know the answer to that. I think partially it's that one part of it is that it is the depths of the conditioning of empire, like the United States, is very advanced, very strong. That's the only thing really they excel at, is that they're not even very good at, as I've brought up over the last 6 months, the empire is not actually particularly good at military engagements. And we'll get into the military dimension, I'm sure, over the course of this. Although I might have to cut it a little bit short, but the U.S. the U.S. empire is not doing very well, and it has not done. Neither the British and the French, none of them really, have ever been particularly good at the military dimensions, and certainly not over a long period of time. The paper tigers, even in the Vietnam War, the Vietnamese were, many times less resourced, many times they had less total soldiers, they had less total money assets, they had less, less advanced technological weapons, but they still defeated the United States. So the strength of the empire doesn't really come from winning military engagements. And in fact, the Roman Empire, like the U.S. empire, when the Roman Empire actually engaged into warfare, they actually rapidly degenerated, and it was really too costly to engage in real serious warfare with a serious opponent. The Roman Empire's strength, here's just a brief little snippet. Just this is not. I'm not saying this is. You have to read this. This is just like a random snippet of something that I was taking a look at earlier. The first half of the 2nd century BCE, a period characterized by successful hegemonic warfare and a rapid overseas expansion. But the public finances of the Roman Republic. Where's that part? It was the middle Republican financial office is an important topic that received little original scrutiny. So this is like a document that's like going into the finances of the Roman Republic. And one of the conclusions is that, in fact, the tributes on war tasks collected from Roman citizens and underestimated expenditures of the public works that were one of the largest non-military expenses undertaken by the Middle Republican state. And in discussions of finance and state power, During the 2nd century BCE, warfare was overall a money-losing proposition for the Roman treasury, and the Roman fiscal apparatus lagged behind other Hellenistic powers, even as, like the Greeks, that's why I bring up Greece and Rome, even as the Roman arms achieved hegemony over the entirety of the Mediterranean. I mean, so that's the important takeaway from that is that, again, empire is not particularly good at winning wars. The Roman Empire was not particularly good at fighting wars. If the Roman Empire had to fight a real significant foe, it would rapidly drain their ability to continue to exercise control, right? And this is the thing that is sometimes a mistake, right? And that people, you know, the British and the French, they were all basically the same. Is that there are profiteers in the military-industrial complex who make money, like Lockheed Martin and Raytheon and Boeing, right? They also like to, assassinate whistleblowers. Like they've already killed 3 and counting. It's a gallows. It is an Imperial implosion joke now. These citizens of the Death Star are several people actually were like, hey, at Boeing on Twitter, at Boeing, my ex knows something about your airplanes, trying to get like their boyfriends killed. Like somebody said, like, I'm too lazy I'm too lazy to unalive myself. Boeing, hey, I know all of the missing screws in your 737, right? That's another way your empire is imploding, when they can't cover up their assassinations of their own citizens. But anyways, so Boeing, Lockheed Martin, Raytheon, these are all, yes, they're part of the military-industrial complex. They make a lot of money making weapons for the empire to use, right? But actually, and the U.S. has, started many and it fights in many wars, and it sends weapons around the world, right? But in actuality, number one, the U.S. is not good at winning wars, right? And Roman Empire actually would, if it had to fight a real large, serious foe, it would not have lasted as long, right? The Greek Empire, number one, never made it to China, and number two, like for a brief time, the Greek Empire, another Hellenistic empire that went out into much of Asia and just kind of ransacked a lot of regions that had not been expecting that, and had been, more often than not peacefully trading. That's why they were not experts at, or they didn't have large portions of their population signed up for military service, right? It's actually very similar to China and Korea. For 1,000 years, they had actually like ended the military portions of the Gaokao examination in the eastern parts of the heartland, as it's called, right? Speaking of empire, and so they were like, we don't need to have so many people engaged in combat, arms training, military, and we don't need to be spending many resources on researching and developing and industrially producing weapons, right? Like the Europeans were doing with the gunpowder they stole from China, by the way. The Chinese were just celebrating. They had gunpowder, they had black powder, sulfur, saltpeter, coal. They had the technology to make guns the whole time, but that's actually another evidence for the lack of imperial nature and action in Central and East Asia, is because they didn't even develop weapons. They could have, right? They developed a printing press. It didn't come out of Europe. It came out of China and Korea. They didn't develop weapons with the powder they had for 1,000 years. They didn't have slavery. Slavery was banned 2,000 years ago. The Romans, the Greeks, they all had slavery. The Europeans, they've always had slavery. And then they've always massively developed their weapons, right? Now the thing is, so for the Greeks, the Romans, the British, the French, historically the colonial, imperial, last 500 years, and then the American Empire, they have all developed weapons. Yes, they've all made money developing weapons to an extent. The people that made the weapons made money. And of course they made money beating up on their citizens, whether those were the Roman farmers, that they beat and exacted tribute from, whether those were the feudal era serfs that the knights beat up and exacted tribute from for their wealthy aristocrats, or the American police that are paid by billionaires, right? And we see that happening on college campuses, right? That pay the police, and the police come or they pay the government that has the police order to come beat up on workers, strikers, students protesting genocide to stop empire, to then extract profit from the masses, right? So the weapons and the violence, right? Whether it's tear gas or Roman centurion brigades, right? Whether it's the swords that the knights are killing and massacring the peasants with, who don't give enough of the potatoes or the wheat to their lord, under the different system of feudalism of Europe. Knights, ACAB is ACAB should also be ACAB. All cops are bad. Quick shout out for Neofeud before I come back to this. Quick shout. Here's a Neofeud. People that are interested in the video game stuff. Here's a Neofeud 2 screenshot from. I'm nearly done with the game, but this is like this is a Redux Neofeud 1 scene Redux where you come back to the same locations in Neofeud 1. So this is Princess Sybil from Neofeud 1, an ex-princess / trillionaire who revolts against Yale. That's Harvard plus Yale. They merge into one because their funding is running short, so they have like the other failing regional banks like Silicon Valley Bank are merging right now because they're collapsing with the empire. That's the financial dimension. So then Harvard and Yale merge together, and so ex-princess / trillionaire Princess Sybil revolts against Yale and says ACAB. Same difference. Wealthy aristocrats pay both knights and cops to use force on workers to squeeze them for profit. So, ACAB, all cops are bad, but all knights are bad. AKAB. That's actually a major central point of Neofeud as well. But anyways, so whatever the weapons that are being made, using the weapons actually was not the ideal situation, right? Whether it was the knight's sword to beat up the peasants for their unjust oligarchic, Henry VIII or whoever was ruling at the time, or the lord or the ladies massacring the peasants to terrorize them, right? The monopoly and violence of an unjust oligarchic a group, minority of people, or capitalists, and the CEOs of Amazon and Raytheon and other billionaires paying their governments and their cops to beat up on the masses, or paying their militaries to beat up on, right, the colony, the real plunder, mass wealth hoarding engines, which is going to the rest of the world and blowing it up, right? There's way more people and resources outside of the United States, right, than there are inside, right? In the same way, there's way more resources outside of Rome and that little, what is now Italy. There's way more resources and people outside, right, than there are inside. And it's also it's harder to justify beating up, full Hellenic, which is that's kind of means the same thing as white, basically, but full today, what it would mean, full Hellenic citizens, right, of Greece or Rome. It was harder to justify beating up and taking from them to the extent you could justify beating up from African or Asiatic, right, or like foreign peoples far away, right? And so that's really the colony is just a word that means that the areas that are far away, that are being massively brutalized, where wealth is really being hugely stolen from, right? And then it's just the colonies and imperial core, colony versus imperial nexus, right? So when people talk about, some people get confused between colonialism, as if colonialism and today's imperialism are two different things. It's the same thing. It ultimately is it's the same thing. Imperialism is focusing on the core, whether that's Rome, London, Paris. At one point, it was it was in the Netherlands. The New York City. Obviously Tokyo during the Japanese imperial era. but it's the same thing. So the last 500 years is just the imperial era continued, right? The difference between the Roman imperial era, the Dark Ages, the feudal era of Europe, and the current imperial era of the last 500 years is that the Europeans had not, which is where this is where the biggest focal point of where this horrible system has existed. They were unable to exert colonial power outside of Europe, right? And it was still horrible in that within Europe, right? But they were only able to extract the resources and the wealth from their own peasants. And sometimes, right, if Britain took territory from France, or if Germany took some territory from a neighboring country, then they could extract more wealth. But it was always inter-European, like internal, not necessarily internal colonization, but it was internal imperial plunder of using an unjust system of a tiny minority of people having access to the majority of the wealth extracted from the masses with their legions, their violence, monopoly on violence doers, that is the police or the knights. In the feudal era, it was the knights beating up on the working class to give the money that is used to pay the knights and to maintain that system, right? The system requires the economic dimension of these unjust systems of imperialism, capitalism, the different feudal system, etc. They require, the money is necessary because the flow of the cash, the flow of the wealth in the Roman Empire is the denarius that they enforced, made everybody use, because that is what the wealth accumulation is, what is required to pay and to maintain the disinformation system through the priests. The Romans had their own education system that was a disinformation system. The Greeks had their own education system, with Aristotle ran, which was also a diseducation system that taught that slavery was good and women were lesser citizens, lesser people, right? So but the money to pay the universities, that, like, there was a university that taught that genocide was good, right? In the Greek era, just like Columbia is, investing in supporting genocide, right? It was called Aristotle. It was Aristotle's education classes that he taught, right? He literally taught that. So to play the disinformers, whether those were the Greek philosophers, the British Anglican, or the French Catholic clergy, the Roman clergy, right? The priestly caste, those people need money. Those people need money to pay for their resources that they're going to get, that the empire is stealing from all the working class under, that don't understand the system and don't get it, that get diseducated and misled, right? By the priestly / education classes. University just took over for the church basically after the Enlightenment era, and they were like, we need some, the university and the college and these schools, Western schools, have never been places of really ultimately learning, right? Just enough math to calculate the trajectory of a cannonball being fired into China in an opium war, but not more, right? Nothing about the truth. You can never really teach the truth in an empire, otherwise it would unravel, right? You can never have educated citizens in a capitalist democracy, otherwise there wouldn't be capitalism, because that is an unjust, horrific, undemocratic system, right? So the money is necessary to be extracted from the locally oppressed, but even more importantly, if you can get away with it, right, the oppressed far away, ideally of a different skin color and phenotype and facial structure and language. Because if they have if they look, but you want to make them speak your language, it's part of imperialism as well. But then if they look and sound different, right, like Afro-Asiatics, right? Again, the whiteness as it exists today wasn't exactly what existed in Greece and Rome, but they did identify. They identified those that were non-Hellenic as deserving of slavery. Slavery, in an imperial capitalistic sense, in the economic means, slavery just means unpaid workers or 100% profit. Workers where you extract 100% labor value, right? A Greek Hellenic citizen would still pay a tax, or would have labor extracted from them, right? But the Greek Hellenic citizen, you'd only take maybe 30% or 40% labor value, right? That's the difference between slavery. That's why the U.S. had slavery, right? So they could rapidly accumulate wealth into a new oligarchy of would-be British imperial leaders, right? And that's why slavery is it's the ideal system for an imperial system, right? And if you don't have slavery, well, your serfdom is, I think it's serfdom is between 30 and 60% or more, a capital accumulation for the ruling class. And the non-unionized labor is 80%. Unionized labor is 50%, maybe 30%, depending. That's not very good, right? But it's still better than no percent, right? Some you can have a union, but you might still be taking the vast majority of wages. So you're not telling people how much money you're making, right? Illegal immigrants is 97%. So actually, illegal immigrants, which basically means no rights, under the table labor, they can be paid as much as like $3 an hour, $2 an hour. It's near slavery, almost slavery, right? So that's why Koch Foods, right, uses under the table illegal immigrants, because that's a 96% profit rate. It's near slavery. Prisoners, right, you can pay $0 an hour. You can get away with it. White House furniture is made for 25 cents an hour or less frequently, right? So Joe Biden's Oval Office chairs, couches, Joe Biden's Abraham Lincoln ottomans, right, are made for 25 cents an hour. That's that we're talking about 99% prison slavery wages, that 99% profit labor value extraction rates, right, for the empire, for Joe Biden personally. So that's the only real difference between those systems. There's not a difference. All the differences are trillions of 2,000 years of trillions of imperial diseducation class, also known as university professors, book writers, and intellectuals, writing about the differences between these systems to mass diseducate all of their 2,000 years of Western imperial conditioned masses, or diseducated masses. So the university and the education systems, there's no education systems in the West. There's only conditioning systems. But the education systems exist in order to, number one, occupy the time of people who people who are intellectually curious, could become investigative journalists or communists or somebody who wants to fight the empire, which is what they should be doing, or to occupy their energy and time of those people that are, who could pose a threat if they became educated, but it's to waste their time writing liberal books and New York Times bestsellers, right? And to take Aristotle's neurons, right, and make him work for the empire, right, for the Greek oligarchy, right? So because Aristotle wrote, hundreds and thousands of pages of stuff, right, with his genius brain, with his Galaxy S9 genius brain, right, that everybody worships, right? Thomas Jefferson wrote lots of stuff. How useful was it? Did it actually bring democracy and freedom? There were lots of Enlightenment writing. The Enlightenment was coincidental with one of the bloodiest, if not the bloodiest, most horrific eras, right? The Enlightenment directly coincided with the 1700s planetary bloodletting of what we call the colonial era. Every era in Europe is the colonial era, but I mean, right? There was no enlightening. There was the endarkenment. That's why whenever Atlantic article, whenever a professor from NYU, right, Alan Dershowitz, right, from Harvard, right, when he's not doing genocide and pedophilia against little children, right, like all Western intellectuals apparently are doing at any scale. When they're not, I mean, look at the Harvard alumni. Look at Epstein's list. Look at who's on the take of genocide. Look at whose blood is of the Palestinians' children. Look at whose hands it's on. It's on all the Western intellectuals in their university systems, especially the ones that are tenured. Everyone who's been silent, and then also taking money. So the purpose of Western education is to waste time and energy and to get as much of the intellectual classes and academics and people who are on the spectrum, like Greta Thunberg. And that's why I don't like her. I mean, because people who are on the spectrum have a difficulty dealing and just moving on with their life when they have the cognitive dissonance of like seeing, oh my God, we're supposed to be a green country in Sweden, but why are we part of this destroying the planet? I don't get it, right? And so those people have to be put into a box called academia, or just silenced if they keep on insisting on having the world make sense, because it doesn't make sense in an imperial core, in an imperial country. So academia, it serves the purpose, and the education system serves the purpose of defining those people, wasting their time. Ideally taking intellectually curious people and then making them work for you. And they don't even realize that's what a liberal is. It's somebody who works for empire, but they don't realize it. If they do realize it, they just have $400 Iron Chef Morimoto squid ink pasta and expensive wine and expensive scotch, and they just try to drown their complicity in genocide and war crimes with all the nice money and fancy jet-setting vacations they can take, being paid by the empire to be a liberal bullshit writer, right? Or nowadays the AI is writing the bullshit for them. So maybe the generative AI will collapse the Western liberal disinformation system, because they'll all lose their jobs to Chat GPT, and then what will the 60% liberal Western Gen X and Boomer crowd do, and a handful of millennial and Gen Zers that go along with that nonsense? Because Chat GPT is, all I have is shrimp Jesus, all I have is shrimp crap, update on Gen AI Imperial collapse update. I sent Holly this thing. Oh my God. The degeneration and the generative AI techno collapse of the technological dimension of collapse has accelerated to we have Shrimp Jesus, we have cyborg cancer ward Jesus. Check this out. Okay, so this is what the empire is putting out now to keep people distracted. Speaking of, instead of bread and circuses like in Rome, you get you don't get any bread. You get H5N1 infected, daiquiri, H5N1 infected milk, and you get what the hell is this? Machu Picchu, like bad Machu Picchu. You get Machu Picchu head, Incan tourist destination, badly photoshopped Jesus eyes, right? Close your eyes 70% and see the magic. Today's my graduation. 2024 is your best year. Oh my God. Okay. Why don't pictures like this ever? So we have beautiful cabin crew. That's like the same thing. You have AI generated posts that are being clicked on by other AIs in these in the spicy autocomplete Nvidia chip carbon wasting internet destruction. The downward spiral of for some, it's very Jesus-y. It's all very Jesus-y. But I guess the Christianity was Western Christianity is a central component of the empires for the last 2,000 years as well. So certainly since the Palestinian resisted genocide named Jesus, and since an imperial anti-imperial Palestinian resisted the Roman Empire, it's always been Jesus is all the way to the U.S. So the U.S. is gonna die lying about Palestine, including their historical figures, and badly with AI. I don't know what is happening here. That guy has 7 fingers. Anyways, inbred Habsburg AI, inbred Habsburg AI, like the Targaryens with their shrunken and misshapen dragon heads each generation, more inbred, more recessive genes, weaker, smaller, more distorted, more ridiculous, less threatening, although more dangerous, still dangerous, and so the US generative AI, each iteration, more distorted, more warped, more obviously nonsensical, getting worse and worse, not improving despite constant, mainstream media, Imperial media reports of the to the moon's unbeatable, generative AI stocks, right? So, because obviously lies are inherent to Empire. Anyway, there you go. So that's the technological collapse of Empire. That's where you're headed. Where was I at? I can't remember. Anyways, so we talked about the economic, the monetary, some of the tech, political dimensions, like we're talking about. Oh, one more thing I wanted to bring up about Luna is, so don't forget to follow Luna. Folks equating Zionism with all Jews used to justify genocide and death via a settler colony will eventually blame Jews for everything, everywhere when their project fails. This harmful narrative doesn't smear Jews, but it threatens other identities too. Yeah, I mean, this is the number one actually anti-Semitic, anti-Jewish hate-causing entity is Israel, and this is a sick weaponization of identity that the thing is, if you are not a Jewish person specifically, but you are a white supremacist, kind of drumming up anti-Semitism while simultaneously hurting Palestinians, which is what Israel does, is actually it does benefit you, right? Because it's kind of like, right? Because if you are a non-Jewish white person and you are a supremacist, which is part of the imperial nature, right? As we said, because it's part of justifying 100% extraction of profit, and also the supremacism of your Hellenic, or nowadays your white population, Hellenic in the Greek and Roman era, or white population, creates the stormtrooper mindset, right? Which is that those people are lesser. So when you beat up on them, because you're gonna need military and police that will do the bidding of the empire, and so creating a hatred for those other people, black, brown, or Afro-Asiatic in the time of Greece and Rome, and creating a superior mentality in the masses is necessary of your metropole, is necessary to have violent murderers, and in the feudal times to have the peasant beaters. The knights had to be superior to the peasants, right? Because the knights that's what they would do, is what they would kill and massacre. Like, it actually comes up in The Witcher, right? One of the main queen characters in The Witcher, she comes back, going to peasants that were asking for better wages, and she just massacres hundreds of them, right? So that's what, and she uses her knights to do that. That's the purpose of knights. It's the real purpose of knights. Well, sometimes they fight wars against rivals, but the main purpose is like the police. The purpose of the police is to keep in check the workers, and they don't necessarily. Now, the cops have batons instead of swords, right? But the purpose is to terrorize, to beat, and to enact mass violence on those who would demand better wages, like strikers, unionizers, communists, socialists. And obviously, if you resist the landlords, which is about the bifurcation of the feudal lord into extracting wealth based upon your property, your rent, and then extracting wealth based upon stolen labor value, which is your lost wages, your lost labor value when corporate profits, right? And the cops do the same thing. They beat up on tenants, right? They do evictions, right? Sometimes Americans set themselves on fire nowadays. They self-immolate, like it's happening frequently. But they do evictions, and then they break the legs of strikers, and they break the legs of students that are trying to stop the global empire. So it's even very important that the police beat up on all the students today. The Israelis and the U.S. billionaires even just say it out loud. They're just like, well, we have to. There's a billionaire who donated like millions to the police departments of the that are currently beating up the and terrorizing and shooting less lethal bullets and smashing the students' wrists and breaking their legs, right? And the billionaire said, we have to make the students feel pain. We have to make these anti-genocide students feel pain. They have to suffer. They have to be terrorized. They have to be beaten. They have to be threatened. Like their degree will be worthless, but even more so, they have to be beaten. They have to be tear gassed. They have to feel, and they have to be scared for their lives. Like ideally, there are U.S. politicians that are calling for Americans, pro-Palestinian, anti-genocide protesters to be slain. You read this one? Like that's a new one for me. I saw that. I was like, whoa, I hadn't seen that one. This is the true face of Mark Hamill, by the way. He's Emperor Palpatine, speaking at the White House. This is Alan Dershowitz saying he will engage in massive offensive lawfare against anti-Semitic student protesters. This guy is, Norman Finkelstein destroyed him on NPR 40 years ago for plagiarizing his entire book. This guy is he is a renowned, celebrated professor at Harvard, and he literally plagiarized his entire book, one of his entire books. It's ridiculous. Where is that one? So this is the police. This is the police smiling as they shoot at the students in the United States. JP Morgan CEO: Americans are in good shape financially. You still have money from COVID. Everybody's fine. So that's another. This is the banker financial elite gaslighting. Here's the Boeing whistleblower that got shot. The people that are claiming that their ex-boyfriends are Boeing whistleblowers to try to get them killed. This is the racist Ole Miss, Mississippi dude who was like looking at making monkey sounds at a black lady. That's him there, being a ultra racist dickhead. Shoot, I can't find it. Where is it? Let me just type this in. Yeah, here it is. NYPD confirms that 99% of arrests at NYU were indeed students, not outside agitators. I mean, NYPD confirms. Now, what do we know about the police? The police always lie. Why do the police always lie? Well, for the same reasons that everything I've been saying, because the West doesn't have a system of information, and it's a constant lying and gaslighting. And then the press report whatever the police say. The sad reality is that our schools are producing. This is from a U.S. politician. So this person is in the United States government. The sad reality, what she says is, the sad reality is our schools are producing monsters, and it's now our job to slay them, to slay your students. So this is a U.S. politician openly calling for the murder of college students at the New York University and elsewhere. Schools and faculty said, I feel like this is like, I mean, that's illegal, man. Doesn't matter. The West has no rule of law. The schools and faculty who sit at the top of this chaos must be raised along with them. So she just said that the schools and the faculty at the top must be raised. Now somebody's bringing, she was just being metaphorical. To raised, it means to burn, completely destroy, burn to the ground. Usually means to burn, to destroy. So are you calling for is this lady calling for the killing and the murder of all the faculty of the university who support the students too? That seems to be what you're saying. They're not interested in solutions as their literature. I mean, who is the violent extremist? Is it the anti-genocide protesters? Or is it Councilman Vicky Palladino, American New York politician, right? Currently in government. They're not interested in solutions. This is not even a Republican, as far as I know. Not that there's any difference between the two, but they're not interested in solutions, as their literature makes crystal clear. It's going to be messy, but it's also going to be worth it. They're leaving us with no choice, though. Time to make our educational institutions about education again. Make our education students about make our educational institutions about education again. Bathe NYU in blood of our students. That's how we make it about education again. Does that make no sense? It absolutely does not make sense. But again, that's empire. That's the West. That's the United States. Doesn't make any freaking sense. And Holly says ACAB. Like I was saying. The aristocrats pay both knights and cops to use force on workers to squeeze them for profit, as Princess Sybil, ex-Princess Sybil, elucidates in the anti-capitalist, anti-imperialist cyberpunk adventure game Neofeud, and the sequel Neofeud 2 that I'm currently working on. And ACAB includes Jedi Knights like Mark Hamill. ACAB includes pro-empire, pro-genocide knights, right? Like apparently Luke Skywalker, Jedi Knight. Like, I wanted to be a Jedi Knight, and I don't know if I want to be a Jedi Knight anymore. Like I said, like I always like, oh yeah, that Star Wars is the best ever. Now, Luke, Mark Hamill, I watched you 40 years ago when I was 3 years old in your Star Wars. It was a good Star Wars. It was an entertaining movie. But you making me say ACAB now. I'm like, I don't. My dad said, if you drink this miso soup, you eat this miso soup. I was like, this is kind of weird. Bean curd, soybean paste, it's a little bit weird and salty, and I think I want a cheeseburger instead because I was hyper Americanized Native Hawaiian. And I was like, no, if you eat this soup, because we went to after we saw Star Wars Return of the Jedi when I was 3, my dad took me and my mom and dad took me to this Chinese restaurant, and my dad said, if you eat this miso soup, you too will gain the Force. If you eat this miso soup, you will turn into a Jedi, and then you will fight Empire, and just like Luke fights Darth Vader and Emperor Palpatine and all those stormtroopers. If you will resist oppression, and you will resist genocide, and you will resist the financial military system of domination and diseducation for a tiny minority of super wealthy oligarchs at the center of the empire. And if you just eat this miso soup, you can be like Luke, right? And I was like, oh yeah, oh boy, I'm gonna eat that. I ate it all. I ate all of it. I was like licking the bowl. I remember very clearly. I can taste the miso soup in my mouth, and I think about being able to levitate X-wings with simply, my mind and some kind of telekinetic. If you drop enough acid and you're a boomer, eventually you write science fiction books like Dune and Star Wars. But anyways, you start doing things with your mind, Either that, or you go into the U.S. military MK Ultra program, and then you can, make the hearts of goats explode as a Jedi warrior. I'm not joking about that, actually. Men who stare at goats. Anyways, so either I was gonna be able to levitate starships, and then maybe I'll have a light sword if I drank all this miso soup. Eat all the miso soup. But Mark, you make me not want to be a Jedi Knight anymore. You're making me want to take my Star Wars poster and throw it out the window. Mark, you're everyone who watches pop culture, movie and TV commentary tube, they're gonna want to set all of their Empire Strikes Back poster on fire. They're gonna want to be Return of the Jedi, AJAB, all Jedi are bad. Why did it just stop? Why did you let Vader get created, right? Why did the Jedi Council sit around? The Jedi Council are like the liberals, though. They just kind of sit around and they talk to each other while the conservatives are over there killing people, doing all kind of nasty stuff, beating up innocent people, having racist people that mimic monkey sounds of black people, just letting them run amok. And then the liberals sitting around there going the Jedi Council going, I wonder what's happening out in the galaxy. I don't know. I have super intuitive. I can see the future. I can see all reality. I can read people's thoughts. I have psionic abilities, but I have no idea what's going on right under my nose. What's going on? I don't know. How could I, in episode 1, 2, and 3, have stopped the rise of Palpatine, right, and the radicalization to the right of Anakin, right? How could I have done that? I don't know, right? But it's, there's probably a version of Star Wars where Biden is like Yoda. Biden is like all the Jedi Council, right? They're Biden and Pelosi and Kamala, and they're like they actually know what they're doing, right? But they're just kind of like the Jedi Council just wanted to make a lot of money by beating up and bloodletting the rest of the galaxy, Or they're like, how could this have happened? I don't know. There's probably somebody can do a rewrite of that. But Emperor Palpatine doesn't he? He really does resemble Biden, though. Like remember the old Pope Ratzinger. They all. You get old and white enough. You old enough and white enough guy. You eventually gonna look like Palpatine. Like Mark Hamill kind of does look like him actually right now. They both look like him. And they're going down together. I'm like they go like Mark. You can you, like. We already have J.K. Rowling. People like millennials are pissed off they can't read freaking Harry Potter because you have TERF Queen, pro genocide. Literally, she's going full Hitler now. Rowling destroying their ability to like their favorite books and movies about magic wizards because of her personal political decisions. Mark, why you gotta go do this? Why you gotta do it, Mark? Why you do it? Anyways, he had already done crappy stuff previous to this. It's not the first time that he's done this, but another thing is that another dimension of what time is 12:42. Another dimension of Imperial implosion is that the fact that this is not the only thing that's happened. There was also not just the big one was Mark Hamill gave a speech even before he was hanging out, right? He gave this talk. This was everybody's sharing this. So Luke's everybody's commenting. Luke Skywalker showing up in support of the Empire. This is a conservative professor too, or this is maybe just a joke. Yeah, this is a Trump 2024 guy, and everybody knows. I mean, this is not even. This is like this is not the best people. They're not sending their best people. They're sending the eagle emoji, freaking Roman centurion, American eagle, Imperial mother, even the American Imperial, symbol slingers. And I feel bad for the bald eagle. They don't deserve that rap, But they've been emblazoned on all they've been blazoned on all the Roman cops, and American cops, American military insignias and American dollars. So I'm sorry, Eagle, but if you are, put, and also that's also evidence of the mass confusion. Like you should be, it's right. If you put the American eagle, I think that's why like Peacemaker has the eagle is like a symbol of the world police and the Peacemaker that believes he's doing the violence on the behalf of the good team, right? But it's kind of like what does that symbol mean? The symbols they're cacophonic themselves. Like you are saying that the Empire is bad and the Empire is run by Joe Biden, but the eagle is a symbol of the American Empire and the Roman Empire. They put it there because they wanted to the Jeffersons and everyone else. They wanted to come to resemble eventually the Roman Empire. That's why New York is the Empire State, right? So this is also a confusion with another layer of confusion, a perpetual befuddlement and nonsense within the empire, even between conservatives and liberals. They don't even know who is what they're fighting for or what side they're actually on at any given time. All they know is the other side is bad, But anyways, so Mark Hamill was over here. Like Mark Hamill doesn't know what he's doing either. I don't think if Mark saw like children getting killed in front of him, I think he'd be like, whoever's doing that is not good, right? But I don't think he has a clue what the hell he's doing. Being the star of the most famous, ostensibly supposed to be anti-empire movie series in the West. So, but anyway, so he's doing that again. This is not the only picture. That's what I was trying to get to. Now, other dimensions before I gotta go. I didn't talk too much about Another thing happening is that the United States, like in the Vietnam War, where the U.S. attacked the country, the Vietnamese, right? The Vietnamese used the Vietnamese. Oops, sorry, I'm trying to find one of the genocide. The Vietnamese, like Luna and Luna's family, they used the resistance by guerrilla warfare and direct military conflict to fight off the United States. And in fact, the guerrilla warfare tactics of the Vietnamese, right, the Viet Cong. I mean, speaking of that, I made just another shout out. I made another entire game based on the Vietnamese resistance. So, which was, again, very much like the Gaza resistance, which is what the U.S. Protesters were actually fighting for. It's actually not just the end of the Vietnam War. It's actually for the victory by the Vietnamese. It was ultimately the Vietnamese that had to resist and fight the empire out with direct military measures, right? And I made a game called Decolonizers with Luna that was specifically about the Vietnamese fighting, like the Palestinians fighting militarily for their liberation and the end of their genocide. Luna, in fact, voices this character, Tanka Kong. Anyway, she has a tank as well. She has an actual literal tank, and then that's to scare all of the racists that call themselves leftists that don't like tanks for some reason, because they're scared. Because I mean, at the end of the day, it does take actual armed struggle, which the United Nations have enshrined in their international law, which is that an occupied nation, an empire that occupies another nation, like the U.S. occupying Vietnam or the U.S. occupying through Israel occupying Palestine. The occupied nation has the right to arms any and all means necessary. They can resist peacefully. They can resist through legal means, international courts like the ICC. They can resist through peaceful protest, demonstration, disruption, sanction, boycotting, divesting, sanctioning, getting people to do that. The occupied nation has the right to resist through any means necessary, including armed struggle, if they choose to do that, which means direct military confrontation, which Palestinians are doing, right? The United Nations has even been clear about that. The UN and international law experts have been basically unanimous, right, about that. The only people that are not clear are the people that are lying for the empire, like Western media and people bought out by the U.S. empire, and Zionists and fascists and etc., which is the same thing. KKK, Zionists, fascists, NYPD, U.S. government, U.S. universities, basically the same thing. Fascists, basically the same thing. Liberals, fascists, basically the same thing. Actually, the liberals are the ones who are like pay the fascist. They're the ones who, they're the fascists that pay the people that pull the triggers and wield the swords to do the fascism. Which is just to say Greek and Roman and French and British and European feudalism and current U.S. and Western so-called capitalist, or not so-called, but capitalist so-called democracy. So the Vietnamese were right to resist, and the American who supported them were right. Now, some of them didn't have the level of education and analysis to realize that what they should have been supporting the full victory of the Vietnamese. Some of them just said we should stop hostilities and stop our troops conducting war against the Vietnamese, that's also true. There were many people who were like anti-war, right? And that's true, but there's another layer of analysis that's missed by many people in the Imperial metropole. That is it's not just that. Is that it's not just wrong to have a war. You are on the wrong side. As the empire that is doing the violence and the great harm for the benefit of a tiny minority of people, hurting the working class, maintaining, and the Vietnam War in part was started to, a portion of that was also to maintain capitalism, right? It was to stop spread of communism. This was explicitly outlined. This is why this was the McCarthy era, the Red Scare, like we got to get rid of them Reds, right? That was a major component of this. It was not just, there's a racist component, obviously. There were Asians, and there were all kind of slurs deployed against the Vietnamese historically, and it continued in that time, and not just the Vietnamese, all Asians, Koreans, Vietnamese, Chinese, they're all just Chi-Com, something, right? So there was a racist component, which is always part of empire, like the Greeks used the non-Hellenic people or lesser people. The Vietnamese are a non-white people; they're a lesser people. So there's the race component. There is the economic component, which is that they're communists and that's evil and bad because, well, let's not talk about it. You talk about it, you'll get fired from your university. Talk about it, you'll get fired from your gainful corporate, government, or other job because you're an enemy of the United States, right? Communism is bad because we're the most free people in the world, but we have to not talk about what most of the world actually would prefer. Right? It's like actually nonsense, right? But anyway, nothing makes sense, obviously, in the empire. Again, but anyways, but yeah, if you want to play Decolonizer, it's a retro Contra style video game that I made. You know, I played Contra around the same time I saw Star Wars, and so this is actually making anti-capitalist, anti-imperialist video games, rather than just making shows about them like Mark Hamill, and then standing genocide and standing empire, like Mark Hamill has done. So you get to actually fight the U.S. military, and you get to fight John McCain's slightly lesser evil twin, John McPain. And then you destroy, you literally get to shoot down U.S. military jets and kill Margaret Thatcher, slash the Queen of England. It's the same thing, and I intentionally got British history wrong because they don't give a crap to get Hawaiian history right. Neither does America, so I'll get your history wrong on purpose. Anyway, so that's just something. So when we talk about so if Star Wars is based upon, right, if Star Wars is supposed to be based upon, right, Viet Cong, right, Rebels were inspired by the Viet Cong. George Lucas on Star Wars, right? There's a movie here. There's a video where George Lucas talks to Jim Cameron and says, the rebels were the Viet Cong and America was the empire, right? If that's true, then again, Mark Hamill is definitely not getting the point. And in addition, one reason why. I mean, it's fine to. This is a personal take, but it's fine to base your art, your media on a struggle, right? And some people will complain, especially liberals, right? Gen X and Boomer liberals especially will complain that this is too on the nose, it's too ham-fisted, this is too direct, it's too didactic, right? It means didactic means this is teaching people a thing, right? But what that really means, and obviously sometimes it's good to be, poetic, and it's good to be, say things in a subtle way, right? But subtlety can often result in complicity. Subtlety is and couching things in metaphors, right, is often and that was actually pushed by the CIA, by the empire, right? That actually designed the way to teach in English departments, right? Which is very important because English departments and political science departments that teach how to write and do rhetoric. It's basically those are the Aristotle factories that will make the people who make the art, who make the media, who write the books, who write the propaganda, the priestly class. That's the disinforming class. They have to be taught. And one of the rules that the U.S. ruling class put into universities, right, in English departments and film departments, right, was don't talk about politics. That's too crass. Don't talk about ideologies. Talk about individuals. Talk about Ayn Rand wrote Ayn Rand was the most obvious, right? Wrote the motion picture screen guy, motion picture Association for the Preservation of American Values. She was anti-communist, pro-capitalist, pro-imperial writer. She was defected from the Soviet Union, right? But also all the college, there's this idea that is instilled into young would-be screenwriters, book writers, anything. You have to not talk about individuals, talk about personal experience. Don't talk about collectives. Don't talk about masses. Don't never talk about capitalism in a bad light, or too obviously a bad light, or you could be a red, right? Never talk about communism in a good light. Never talk about collectivism. Never talk about collective struggles. Always talk about individual experiences. Always talk about individual achievements. In selfish individualism specifically, right? The cowboy is a manifestation of that, right? That's part of the American program. It's not accidentally they had single individual strong white men with guns, right, stopping the bad in the world. That was part of the propaganda. That's part of the continued Greco-Roman, British, French, Spanish, United States, Centurion aganda, Knight aganda, propaganda, U.S. military aganda, right? It's a very specific. In Fallout, it actually they show that for a moment where like, the Hollywood star who plays a lot of cowboys is kind of like, I'm not sure if I want to be that cowboy that just that's just shooting people for being bad because they're criminals. I mean, I'm feeling a little bit weird about that, and he's somebody that fought communists, right, in the Fallout TV show. And Cooper Howard, he plays the ghoul later in the future. In the apocalyptic future, plays the ghoul, but he's kind of like, I'm not sure if I'm comfortable with that. And then he gets accused of being a gay pinko commie later on, right? Because like you have to love the cops. You have to love capitalism. You have to love the U.S. military. You have to love the Vietnam War. It was a good thing because we were stopping the bad. The Vietnam War was the American cowboy shooting the bad savage, the communist, savages coming in. We're the good American cowboys shooting the bad Indians. These communist bad people out there, right? This is like telling the Greek, you're the good Greek, Hellenic people. The Greeks, you're just a cowboy civilizing Asia, right? When Alexander went through Babylon, when he went through Central Asia, when he went through what is now Afghanistan, when he went through, right, Syria, right, and he killed and enslaved people, right, and or freed them from their lives with his sword, and he went through and he brought civilization, right? He was his people. We were telling, we're gonna bring the great Greek capitalist oligarchic imperial democracy to these fallen hordes, right? We're gonna bring civilization to them, just like Americans were like, when we go to Vietnam, right? When we go to Vietnam, we are bringing, right? We are saving you, right? Well, we're gonna kill you because you're just fallen, and then you will realize your errors. This actually doesn't make any sense, right? If they're fallen, degenerate, evolutionarily lesser people, right? But you see, then Aristotle corrects that. But you see, yes, when we go and we take African and Asiatic slaves, like when Alexander went and he took his slaves, when he conquered those regions, right, and he crushed them and subdued them, it was for their own good, because it's in the nature of the Asian and the African and the brown and the Indian to be enslaved. That's just their nature. Aristotle literally wrote that, right? The Romans had similar ideology, right? When we go to non-Roman areas in Africa again, and there's these weird little backwaters in the indigenous regions or places that used to be indigenous to Spain and France and Britain, those and all these other regions, these savages out there, these Gaelic peoples, and there's all these strange peoples, that they're led by this Jesus character, these resistors, these fools, right? We'll have to put them down somehow, right? They're lesser peoples out there. We have to put them down, but it will be great for them to be our slaves, because that's their natural state of being, right? Yes, they're lesser, but they can aspire to be our slaves, right? And those Vietnamese, they're like, they should have our democracy or something. But no, actually, they don't put that there. What they put there is colonies, like they always do, right? And so, but it will be great for the Vietnamese who are lesser subhumans to be part of our racism-free America. It doesn't make any sense. Right? We have to bomb you into the Stone Age to save you. in every there's literally a saying, right? In every Vietnamese, in every Korean, is an American dying to get out, right? Which is both. It's a sick joke because it's both like when we kill you, then you'll be free of your life. You don't deserve to live, and also if we kill enough of you, we'll convert you into Americans, but you'll never really be an American. You'll never really be an American because you're too Asian, right? But you can have some like apple pie. You know, like Koreans, you can have cheese and lots of you can have Pizza Hut and cheese as long as you kill North Koreans, because those are evil communists. But you can't really be Americans. You know, that's why Americans are really disturbed by all the K-pop. The conservative Americans are disturbed because they're like, what if like white supremacy starts to devolve? And that's a question that people are asking. Like, as the Asian influence increases, right? And also obviously the fear of China and the fear of again the Hellenic, the Greek fear of the non-Hellenic. There was Greek and Roman fear that if we bring too many of these brown and black people into our Greece's and Rome's, we will lose our character. Right? That's a discussion that doesn't get discussed, right? But there were the MAGA, make Greece great again, like conservative, like Trumpian Greeks, and there were Trumpian Romans. They were like, it's fine to have some slaves, it's fine to have subservient colonies, but we don't want too many of them inside of our Rome. And Europe has always had that. Brexit, right? We have too many of these dark peoples. France, we have too many Africans in our great France. Now, some people, but of course, the imperialists are like, well, we need to keep doing the wars in Africa and Asia to keep our imperial plunder going up for our giant bank accounts. But then there's always the two parties in the West, in the empire, is always the party that is let's get rid of and kill and subdue more of the non-white people inside. Right, that's the conservative party. And then there's the let's crush and kill and subdue lots of those people outside, and that's the Democratic Party, right? And pretend like we care about the brown and black people we've displaced inside. We've displaced inside, right? So because sometimes the conservative side will say, the conservative side will also be interested in doing these warfare and such, but sometimes they will get concerned that, hey, there's too many. I think we're having a little too many. We're losing our stock is degenerating, right? That's what the conservative fascist, Proud Boy, Hitlerian stock, Hitlerian, side will say. We're diluting our people with too much brown and blackness. There's too many babies that are like half black and half brown, and this is degenerating our people. So we have to make our empire great again by making it pure Greek, Roman, British, French, Spanish, American again, right? Or pure Japanese. Of course, they have extreme xenophobic culture as well. It's another thing. That's part of what has that's part of their participation in the imperial global projects, right? Is there that element that's always part of it, because you can't, if you don't have a level of hatred and bigotry in the society, you're never going to get to a society that's capable of having thousands and hundreds of thousands or millions of their people go out and kill people across the world, right? You have to have hatred. Fascism, the liberals must cultivate hatred like burning smoldering coals in the hearts of every of their, especially the lower class and the underclasses, right? You have to have a hateful bigotry engendered in large swaths of your society, especially the lower, whiter parts of the society, because they are the pool of resources that you will need to send out, right, to crush and kill to maintain your colonies. And so that's where the liberal fascist bargain is always there. They never. The pretense is that they don't work together. The liberal Karen calls the conservative white dude cop, right? They're good friends. The Fox News CEO and the MSNBC CEO, they're good friends. It's now 1:05. I'm actually keeping an eye on the time. Okay, I'm gonna leave soon. So that's a lot of the historical angles I've talked about. Okay, now I'll finish up with the financial and the tech angles. So now the thing is in the Imperial world, there is, you, as I said, it requires the money, right? The economic dimension is necessary. Necessary. Why am I speaking like I'm like freaking it's necessary. Anyways, and so the last thing I didn't talk about is what's happening now with China dropping the US dollar. Sorry, that's as far as I can zoom in. So obviously there is now some people have brought up that, well, China is another empire, Russia is another empire, and it's going to be the same. We're just going to keep going down the tubes because, and then after China and Russia, and then Iran is an empire, and then and then some people, everybody, like every state is an empire, every country is an empire. They're all empires, and so if the United States, falls, then we're just going to have more empire. So number one, it doesn't even matter. So who cares? We should just support America because America, it's better to have a white empire. It's better to have a democratic empire like the United States or Europe. It's better to have a European or a Western liberal democracy running the world. So we have to stop this. Like we have to stop the rise of China. Like, because they're authoritarian and they're a dictatorship and they're evil and they're bad. And we have to just like do whatever we can to stop them. There's a long discussion to be had about that, and depends on how much time and my blood sugar and how much caffeine I have. But for those who are of the American libertarian,
Democracy at Work
social
founder
democrat,
and the new school visiting professor Richard Wolff is with us now. She doesn't go, you're the Marxist, right?
Or other persuasion. I offer you. Where is his the democracy at work? Richard Wolff is a Marxist professor. This guy has a alma mater that is all the top Ivy League schools. It's like Harvard, Princeton, and Yale. Okay, and he has an entire video called "The Phenomenon of China." Okay, and so I recommend, if you don't know anything about it, and many people who watch my channel, you probably know something about it. But if you don't know anything about China, and you come from that direction, you should take a look at that video. Okay. If you already know what I'm probably gonna say about it, then we'll continue on with this. But an important factor in this is that as empires rise, right? We talked about the United States and the capital accumulation, fast, rapid accumulation using slavery, chattel slavery, of 100% labor value extraction from the indigenous population in the 1600s especially, and then especially the African slavery on stolen indigenous land in the United States. And so that gave, the American cotton growers, American plantation owners, American cotton that was sold to Britain, by the way, that benefited from the slavery, having cheap access to lots of the clothing material of cotton, tobacco, etc. Right, and so the capital accumulation that builds empire, and then later on, the United States obviously went around to the rest of the world, and then it took over Central South America in the Monroe Doctrine. That was their version of Europeans, using Africa as their place of plunder. And so China, which has been now, like, number one, I don't think I want to go into what specifically China is, because it's hard. It's very difficult to cut through Western BS in a short period of time with that. But long story short, the Chinese have bought up for the last decade plus 2 decades, since the dot-com bubble. The United States has relied on many countries, Japan and China specifically, to buy up debt. After 0809, China had to massively buy up hundreds of billions of dollars. They were up to over $1 trillion of U.S. treasuries. It's basically money, the money that the U.S. is able to print. This is another whole massive dimension of the empire that I can't go fully into. But basically, when a country, when an empire gains such force that it's able to make and enforce its currency as the reserve currency. The Romans were able to do that with the denarius, where they were forcing entire regions of the Mediterranean, North Africa, parts of Europe, and West Asia to use their currency. This gives the empire the power to basically manufacture, print money. It's just it's the exorbitant privilege of the dollar, right? And so they're able to print as much money as they wanted. And this is a whole nother level of control. So it's beyond simply accumulating capital. Like if you are a store owner and you pay your worker, let's say you have 20 workers at your grocery store or something, and you pay your workers less than they are worth, and you make $100,000 of profit that year. Let's say you're a bigger company, you make weapons parts, and or airplanes. And you make, you pay less than your workers are worth, and the CEO and the shareholders take, let's say, 10 billion of profit in a year, right? That's a lot of money that you're making, right? But on the greatest scale, and I make this point in a video. If you want to learn more about this topic, because I don't have time to go into it fully, which is at the highest scales of financial. It's some people call it super imperialism, or it's not really super. It's just imperialism. Super imperialism is like when you have planet scale, right? Which is that at the highest scale, you don't need to make money. You don't need to make profit at all, right? If you can control so much of the world's, so much of the known world or a certain region, and now today the United States can control much of the world. They could. Now they're losing control, right? You don't need to make money, right? When you control the system of exchange, and also when you control the banking system, and also this is another thing that people don't really understand about money either. Is that like the people that are able to manufacture money, generally the banks, they don't care about making money. If they need money, they print money, right? The goal is to be able to control the human beings, the masses, right? The soldiers that need to punch and put down other people to get the resources, right, from their citizens, right? Their serfs, their workers, their slaves, their Greek and Roman farmers, right? And then they need to go abroad and beat up and extract from the outside. The resources is not the same as money also, right? So the resources, actual physical steel, right? Oil, right? Semiconductors, the inputs to make semiconductors, the silicon, the sand, the energy inputs, natural gas, right? The photovoltaic cells, the precursors to the photovoltaic cells, those are resources. The money that is printed and is sent out, that is not the same thing, right? The empire uses the money that is printed they need the resources, right? They need the resources, and they weaponize trade itself, which is a thing humans do outside of empire, right? Like on the Silk Road, the indigenous territories across the planet, the global majority, the Americas, Native Americans, the Pacific Islanders, and the Maritime Silk Road, Asia, Africa, traded, right? But when an empire gains so much control that they can manipulate the activity, the human activity of trading itself, right? Then you can force people to use your currency. You get exorbitant Roman or British pound or American dollar privilege, right? And then you can do things like sanction countries and stop them from getting access to the trade that allows their people to eat and to advance their economies and benefit their lives, right? And so the trade itself becomes a weapon, right? The store of wealth, right? At the highest level of empire, the making money is not the point, right? It is controlling the resources of the planet. It is controlling the resources and the territory that has the resources, the human resources of the world, controlling the minds, right? So money, you print money and then you can give it to, for example, media companies, you can give it to university boards, right? And Zionists has infinite money because they also, are deeply entrenched in the banking system. So they can print money. They get the free money. Most of the U.S. Government and the Treasury and the banking system is pro-Zionist. And if they are not dyed in the wool, I will bathe in the blood of Palestinians. They support Israel, and so they print money, and they can buy as much consent as they want. That's why they can buy the entire Senate and the Congress, right? And so that's just one dimension of control. But also being able to control being able to control where the resources are, where the resources flow. The United States has been able to import massive amounts and consume massive amounts of resources into itself because of the dollar privilege, the dollar hegemony, the SWIFT international payment system, so without which countries cannot even get access to their basic inputs, agricultural products, steel products, technological products, investment, right? And so that's really one. I mean, that's not like, so the military and the financial are interrelated. The money itself can be weaponized to strangle economies, like strangling Cuba. And then the military can be used to go in and physically crush and destroy Vietnam, right? They tried to militarily crush Cuba. The U.S. empire tried to crush Cuba. They failed. So they financially embargoed, sanctioned Cuba with their dollar hegemony, right? Or their financial weaponization. So, but at the end of the day, like the infinite amounts of the fiat currency can be printed. Not infinite amounts of gold. That's why China is buying gold. China is buying gold, getting resources. They have been doing that. Now they're really increasing that because they're at the point where they're looking at a more direct cutting off of their strategy vis-a-vis the U.S. empire is changing. Part of that is because of the continued aggression that's coming from the U.S. empire. And there's a reason why. It's the same reason they aggressed against Vietnam. It's just there's a spread of the big C word, and it's a spread of the non-imperial path, which the West cannot deal with. It's a spread of win-win cooperation and mutual benefit and trade. Like I said, trade has always happened throughout human societies, right? That's part of how exchange and cultural exchange happens. It's part of how people gain new technological and philosophical and artistic ideas, right? Cross-pollination. Part of the Silk Road exchange was yes, economic exchange of Chinese silk coming to Africa and African food and African textile products then going all the way to China and then everywhere along the way, gaining from that, right? But it's also there's cultural exchange, right? And you gain economically from that, but then you also gain culturally because you get enriched because you get to experience different people's cultures. And that's a thing that the U.S. and the West is used to being able to because there's lots of hippies who went to Asia and they have dream catchers on their wall. I mean, consuming other people's cultures to their detriment made by your corporations is not the same as actually cooperating in an equal way, right? See, U.S. Western cooperation would be allowing BYD electric cars, which have outclassed and outpaced and outsold Tesla already. The U.S. allowing Chinese electric cars that are the best in the world to be sold that would benefit Americans, that would be real win-win cooperation on an equal playing field. Europeans allowing that, right? But that's not what they want. That's not what the ruling class wants, and that's what the ruling imperial class wants American consumers to think, right? If the U.S., right, but American consumers, there's Chinese electric cars. The Huawei phone is better than all. The Canadians briefly had a Huawei phone, but the United States won't let you have one because why? Because that would jeopardize the planetary hegemonic control through the technological domain of mass informational control and mass informational distribution. That's also why they're trying to ban TikTok, right? Is banning TikTok if the U.S. and the West really wanted to do mutual beneficial trade and not do imperial unfair plunder, right? They would not be trying to ban TikTok. They would not be trying to ban the BYD cars. They would not be trying to beg China for money. For Janet Yellen going over there to beg China for money to try to make more weapons to shoot at China, right? And this is why the Chinese cannot stand to, they just like sigh whenever they hear there's an American official coming to their country, because they would like to not, right, be in this competition. But empire, another facet of empire is empire sows the seeds of its own destruction, and it sows the seeds. Its mentality doesn't just disappear overnight, right? The United States ruling class, that's the Biden, all administrations, the Biden and the Trump administration, and all the billionaires and oligarchs behind them, right? The presidents and Western democratic leaders are just puppets. They're ultimately, they're not very powerful. They don't really who calls the shots, right? But the people behind them also, right? They are imperial. They believe that they deserve to rule the world. They like to rule the world. The neocons definitely do. That run all, and the neocons and the Goldman Sachs bankers, they like being able to control world affairs, and they're upset that they can't dominate and control things. And they it's almost like they can't get past that. And so it's just very frustrating. It's kind of like but even though now they're knowing that if China drops the US dollar, if China does drop they are doing that. That's what's happening, right? They've gone down to the lowest level for decades of U.S. Treasury holdings. That is pulling the rug. One way that China is economically slowly pulling the rug out from the U.S. The thing is, the Chinese could easily, quickly pull it all out, financially and economically, and it would be catastrophic. It's really, the Chinese are being fairly nice. If it was the other way around, if the Europeans or Americans, the British, if it was a real colonizer, if it was a real empire on the other side, if the U.S. or the Europeans, the British, French, Spanish, Greek, Roman, or the Japanese Empire were being threatened the way, especially with warships up and down their coast, right? If there were Chinese warships flying, and if there were Chinese military aircraft flying all over New York City, that's what's happening in China, by the way. It's like right off the coast of China, and sometimes over China, there's American and Canadian jet military aircraft, right? The U.S. would have already started a catastrophic war way before that, right? So the Chinese are being very, very patient, but now they're getting less patient, and that's resulting in the dropping of the U.S. dollar. And what that's going to do is that is going to decrease again, right? Talking about the Roman denarius hegemony, which they were shaving, and they were doing hyperinflation towards the end of their reign, where they had like less than 1/18 the silver that was supposed to be in a Roman silver coin, right? The same way that the U.S. dollar is there's so much U.S. dollars being printed that the value of it is decreasing. The weaponization of the U.S. dollars against Afghanistan, Venezuela, Iran, and then Russia, right? 2 years ago, that was the beginning of the collapse of the forced use of the U.S. dollar as the world trade currency, right? That gave them the exorbitant privilege, and there was reserve savings and then a trade currency. So what that means is that this is another dimension of that the current reigning empire is going to be facing. This could mean 25 to 57% decreases in the actual spending power of American households. So it's not going to be good. So that's an estimate. That's a rough estimate. So however much money you have right now, the de-dollarization process, where the U.S. loses its exorbitant imperial privilege globally, financially, will mean a loss of up to half or more of the not just like your money is not going to disappear, but if you think inflation is bad right now, and the U.S. central banks are trying to fight inflation and simultaneously deal with asset bubbles and all these catastrophic collapses, and the lack of buying up of the treasuries and the lack of buying up of their dollars, the U.S. is trying to force their vassal Japan to buy up all the treasuries. So Japan is taking Japan's economy is eating the U.S. crap sandwich, but there's not enough Japan to eat it all. What the U.S. is really doing is making Europe and Japan like take as much pain as it can and try to spare itself. But the thing is, it can't spare it all, and also there's not enough to do that. And also the worse that things get for the United States, the more it shoots itself in the foot. The U.S. empire keeps shooting itself in its own foot, which is fine. That's whatever. The more likely that its collapse is to happen. So that means that like it's going to be rough, but that also means that it's financially it is going to be difficult for average American people when the financial dimension of empire implodes, right? But there is no alternative. There actually is no alternative. Not Margaret Thatcher's Tina, which is a pro-neoliberal slogan. But the empire must, historically, Hawley's Reading Foundation, which is Isaac Asimov, deals with the collapse of the Roman Empire and the era following that, right? And what would the space Dark Ages look like, and how could you minimize the suffering and the length of that, right? In the post Imperial collapse, how could you mitigate the damage from a collapsing empire? That's the question that Isaac Asimov asked in Foundation. And like one of the things is to, again, the wealthy ruling classes that have enlisted the knights, the cops, the Greek and the Roman soldiers to beat up on their working classes, right? They are going to keep using their police to keep beating up on you, like they're doing to the college students, right? Like they're doing to strikers. The UAW, May Day was this week. The UAW called for a sympathy strike if the police don't continue. If the police continue and colleges continue to use the police to violently attack peaceful college stop genocide protesters, there's going to be a strike. The police will be called in to beat up those striking workers, right? The police are being. Joe Biden announced $37 billion today to make America safer, make college campuses safer, to fund police budgets. So things are again, we're talking about whatever money you have, imagine it getting cut by half. So the price of bread goes from $5 to $10, right? As this decline happens, that is going to increase. So the empire itself that has always squeezed its own people and its colonies even more so for the profit that is the blood and the nutrients of the empire itself. As they run out of colonies, as they run out of the exorbitant dollar privilege, as their military terrorism, not really military domination, but military projection, military, big scary military enforcement, right? Because again, winning wars is not actually something that any of the empires have really been that great at, pound for pound. As that loses, and they can't, as the empire loses its colonies to suck the lifeblood from, they're gonna suck it more and more from the citizens of their own countries, because it has to come from somewhere. So that means more police, right? More police, more fascism, pretending it's not, more mask off. The Boeing whistleblower assassinations are really, the Boeing whistleblower killings are just kind of like a test to see. It's about, again, and also the COVID response, right? Pandemic response is about how much can we desensitize, and just get people used to mass death, because they're going to inflict more and more and more and more and more and more and more of that on the U.S. ruling class through their governments, through their police, and through their health systems and their university system, their education systems that aren't. They're going to keep enforcing and slowly but surely increasing the pain as they keep trying to suck whatever they can out of your body, like a dying, like a tapeworm killing the host, like a vampires draining from a smaller and smaller pool of townspeople, right? And so the only option is for the people to continue to resist by whatever means they can, and part of that obviously is education. That's why we do what we do. And that's a good place to end this stream, because it's now 1:30. And anyway, so Mark Hamill, what the WTF, Luke? In sum, Luke, he is not your father, Luke. Luke, why you do this to me? No. Anyways, you can support us to keep doing this education by going to Ko-Fi and giving us some financial support through ko-fi.com/silverspook. And any amount really does help us out to keep doing this work. You can also help us out at patreon.com/Neofeud. We are currently at we're well below where we would need to be. So please help us not worry about our bills and keeping a roof over our head and keeping the kids fed and all those kinds of things that we need to do here at the Silver Spook Cooperative. So consider becoming a Patreon supporter if you aren't yet. And when you do, you get access to behind the scenes on what we're working on, including Neofeud 2 related material like this, what we're doing at the Silver Spook Cooperative like that, going to libraries while they still exist and not completely defunded and destroyed. And this is some Neofeud 2 screenshots. And you also get access to behind the scenes on what we're working on like that, and the Silver Spook Discord. And of course, you also get access to the Silver Spook University. Oh, one more thing is, if you do use Twitch, I have actually added some new emojis. Is it emojis or yeah, emotes. Yeah. So I got a whole bunch of new emotes. So don't forget to go and subscribe so you can get Princess Sybil, Proto J, Carl Carbon, main Neofeud 2 character, Silver Spook, and other fun emotes on that platform. And yeah. Anyways, you can get Neofeud, which is a game that does support everything. Also, you can get the Silver Spook University when you become a Silver Spook Patreon, which is a indigenous left education that combines decolonized history, current struggles, imagined futures, cultural analysis from a Native Hawaiian activist, educator, and science fiction writer perspective. That's mine. And of course, you also get this is about debunking and getting rid of the Western lies about past, present, and future that permeate formal schooling, modern books, media, and universities, sadly. And at Silver Spook University, no complicity in genocide, no COVID, no viruses, all remote options. And you get hundreds of hours of this entertaining educational videos categorized according to topics. Basically, all my content categorized by topic, plus all these threads and all the work that Holly puts into organizing all of that information. And that's another benefit of becoming a Silver Spook Patreon. You can also get Neofeud on Steam. Neofeud is a cyberpunk adventure game that I worked on for 2.5 years, an anti-empire. Neofeud is actually anti-empire cyberpunk adventure game. There is no corporate capitalist funding involved in this. I made it all myself in the Silver Spook Cooperative. It did no money no money will go to Israel. Unlike some game companies that have co-investments in the horrible military contractors. In fact, most big game companies do. And you can also help us keep doing this work by picking up this game. That is also, if you can leave a very short review, it helps to get the game discovered in the algorithm. So consider leaving even a very short review. You can also get Neofeud on itch.io for Windows and for Mac and for Linux. And you can get, of course, Decolonators again. If you have not yet, don't forget you can, help fight the struggle that the college students today are protesting for, but in the 1970s, right? When the Vietnamese were being genocided by the United States. You can also get Indigistar, which is about resisting a Native Hawaiian. It's like Native Hawaiian 2001/Star Wars, where Empire resists by healing land and people, preventing erasure of native language and culture, and confronting invaders in Indigistar, which is also set in the universe of Neofeud 1 and 2. You can also get Pigeon with Gun and Woman is a book by Holly, who was raised in right-wing evangelical Protestant Christianity, and it critiques that culture and that world from the perspective of Mary in the Bible. And of course, you can follow at Silverspook Games at Octodon.social, at Silverspook Games at Mastodon.social, on Twitter at Silverspook Guy and Silverspook Games, minus the E in silver for the Silverspook Games. Terminus C at Terminus C. Terminus Cyberstar is a cyberpunk RPG that I'm the content director and the lead writer for. Sequel to Terminus Machina. I didn't talk about the anonymous hacks, but the main character in Terminus Machina, the original, is a hacktivist who takes down Imperial, genocidal, nasty corporations, organizations, and police departments and government websites. And I'm glad to see that coming back. That's where Terminus started out. Anyways, you can also follow Holly at the Tech Fairy, his wife, partner here at the Silver Spook Cooperative since 2009, producer and more for the Kate Nix music and variety show, writer, educator, sapphic queer person, MECFS having person, and mask wearer, and parent to 2 Native Hawaiian children here at the Silver Spook cooperative. And until next time, keep your mirror stays polished. Use the Force to fight Empire. Don't take pictures with the Emperor Palpatine and stand him. That's the opposite of what Luke would do, I think. Too bad. Thank you all the patrons as well. Massively appreciated for all of your continued support.